I can't do this anymore. You don't look like the man I was dating.
But I still love you. I'm still me inside.
The words hit him like a freight train. He felt his chest tighten, his breath shallow. She stood there, looking at him, her eyes filled with regret, but there was no going back. I'm sorry, she added, almost too softly. I thought I could love you through this. I thought I could stay. But I can't. Not anymore. His heart dropped. His mind raced, but all he could do was look at her, searching for something, anything, to make sense of what was happening. The woman he loved, the woman who once saw him as more than just scars, was now walking away from him. He didn't speak. He couldn't. He just sat there, frozen in the chair, a lifetime of love and promises unraveling before his eyes. She stepped closer, eyes full of hesitation. I can't love you like this anymore. Not with what you've become. You're not the man I fell in love with. Not anymore. Each word cut deeper than the last. He wanted to scream, to plead, but he could barely find his voice. But I still love you, he choked out, his voice trembling. Even with all of this, I'm still me. I'm still the same person inside. She shook her head, unable to look him in the eyes. No, you're not. And that was it. The final blow. She turned to leave, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, each step a reminder that this was the end. I'm sorry. I really am. But I can't do this anymore. The door clicked shut behind her. He remained motionless, the weight of her words crushing him. The room felt like it was closing in. She was gone. And with her, so was the last thread of hope he had left. Min Jae Kong thought that was the end of his story. That he'd lost everything that mattered. His face. His career. And now, the woman he loved. What he didn't know was that 5,000 miles away in London, a woman carrying her own grief was about to board a plane. Her name was Nancy Okafor. And she wasn't coming to love him. She was coming to make sure he didn't die alone. But somewhere between the scars, the silence, and the nights neither of them slept, they would find something neither was looking for. This is their story. A story that proves sometimes the people who save us are the ones who need saving just as much. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever needed someone to believe in you when you couldn't believe in yourself, this story is for you. Stay until the end. You won't regret it. But let me tell you how it all started. Not with love. But with two people who had given up on both. If you already feel the hit of this story, kindly like, subscribe and tell me where you are watching from in the comments section. Thank you. The crash happened on a Tuesday. Min Jae Kang's black sedan collided with a delivery truck on Olympic Highway at 11:47 p.m. The impact sent his car spinning across 3 lanes before it slammed into the concrete barrier. Glass shattered. Metal twisted. Blood pooled on the leather seats. Emergency responders found him unconscious, his face unrecognizable. The steering wheel had crushed his cheekbone. Shards of glass had carved deep wounds across his jaw and temple. His legs were shattered in 4 places. The paramedics gave him a 30% chance of survival. He survived. But the face Korea had fallen in love with did not. 8 months later, Min Jae sat alone in his villa overlooking the Han River. Every mirror in the house was covered with white sheets. His phone had been off for 6 weeks. The stack of unopened fan letters by his door had stopped growing because his agency had stopped forwarding them. The world had moved on. New actors had taken his roles. His endorsement deals had quietly expired. His name, once shouted in stadiums, was now whispered with pity. He spent his days in darkness. The curtains stayed drawn. Meals went uneaten. Physical therapy appointments were cancelled. His manager, Mr. Park, had tried everything. Therapists. Doctors. Even a Buddhist monk. Min Jae sent them all away. I don't need help, he'd said through the locked door. I need to be left alone. Mr. Park made one final call. To an agency in London that specialized in what they called crisis intervention care. The woman who answered listened to his desperate explanation, asked 3 questions, and said, I'll send someone on the next flight. That someone was Nancy Okafor. Nancy stood outside Min Jae's villa on a cold November morning, her British passport still warm in her coat pocket. The building was modern, all glass and steel, perched on a hillside like a monument to success. She'd researched Min Jae on the flight. Watched his films. Read about the accident. Seen the leaked hospital photos that had been spread across social media like wildfire. She knew what trauma looked like. She'd seen it in her own mirror for 2 years. The housekeeper, Mrs. Kim, opened the door. Her eyes were red from crying. "You are Nancy?" "Yes, ma'am." "He will not see you." "He sees no one." Nancy smiled gently. "That's all right. I'm very patient." Mrs. Kim led her to a guest room on the first floor. The villa was immaculate and lifeless. Expensive furniture that no one sat on. Art that no one looked at. A kitchen that smelled like nothing because no one cooked. "He stays in his room," Mrs. Kim whispered. "Second floor. East wing. He only comes out at night when he thinks I'm asleep." Nancy unpacked slowly. A photo frame with a young black woman's face, frozen in laughter. A small wooden cross. Her nursing certificates. A journal filled with handwritten notes. She placed the photo on the nightstand and touched the glass. "I'm here, Amara," she whispered. "Wish me luck." That evening, Nancy cooked. She filled the kitchen with the smell of jollof rice, fried plantains, and chicken stew seasoned with Scotch bonnet peppers and thyme. The aroma spread through the villa like an invitation. She hummed while she worked, an old Yoruba hymn her mother used to sing. When the food was ready, she prepared a plate and carried it upstairs. Min-jae's door was solid oak, imposing and final. She set the plate down gently and knocked twice. "Mr. Kong, my name is Nancy. I'm not here to bother you. I just thought you might be hungry. I'll leave this here." No pressure. Silence. Nancy returned to the kitchen and ate alone. She washed the dishes. Read a book in the living room. At midnight, she walked past Min-jae's door. The plate was gone. The next morning, she cooked breakfast. Scrambled eggs with tomatoes and onions. Toast. Fresh orange juice. She left it outside his door with a note written in careful Korean characters she'd practiced on the plane. "Food connects us when words fail." The plate was gone by noon. This continued for 5 days. Nancy cooked. Nancy left food. Nancy waited. She didn't knock again. Didn't call out. Just left the meals like quiet prayers. On the 6th night, she was reading in the living room when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow. Uneven. The sound of someone who'd forgotten how to walk properly. She didn't look up. Didn't acknowledge the presence now standing in the doorway. Min-jae's voice was rough from disuse. "Why are you here?" Nancy turned a page of her book. "Because someone asked me to be." "I didn't ask for you." "No. You didn't." He moved closer. She could see him now in her peripheral vision. Tall. Thin. His face hidden behind long, unwashed hair and a black medical mask. Baggy clothes that hung off a frame that had lost too much weight. "I don't need a babysitter," he said. "Good. I'm a caregiver, not a babysitter." "What's the difference?" Nancy finally looked at him. Her eyes were kind but unflinching. "A babysitter waits for you to behave. A caregiver sits with you while you figure out how." Min-jae laughed. It was bitter and sharp. Philosophical. "How much is Park paying you to spout wisdom at me?" "Enough to take care of my expenses. Not enough to tolerate disrespect." He stepped back, surprised. Most people handled him with kid gloves now. Spoke in soft voices. Treated him like broken glass. "You should leave," he said. "I'm not a charity case." "I agree." "Then why are you still here?" Nancy closed her book and stood. She was shorter than him but her presence filled the room. "Because my best friend killed herself 2 years ago." She was depressed. She was struggling. And I was too busy with my own life to see it. By the time I paid attention, she was gone. Min-jae went still. "So no, Mr. Kong, you're not a charity case. You're my second chance. And I don't plan on wasting it." She walked past him toward the stairs. Paused. "Also, you need to shower. I'll make dinner at 7. Join me or don't. Your choice." She left him standing there in the dark. At 7:15, Nancy sat alone at the dining table. She'd made kimchi jjigae, having asked Mrs. Kim for help with the recipe. The stew bubbled in the pot, rich and comforting. She served herself and began eating. At 7:20, Min-jae appeared. He sat down across from her without a word. His mask was still on. His hair still covered most of his face. Nancy ladled stew into a bowl and slid it across the table. They ate in silence. When they finished, Min-jae spoke. What was her name? Amara. How did you meet? University. She was studying psychology. I was in nursing. We were roommates who became sisters. What happened? Nancy's hand tightened around her spoon. She hid it well. The depression. The thoughts. She smiled in all our photos. Laughed at my terrible jokes. Came to my family's Christmas dinners. Then one morning, I found her. Pills. A note that said she was sorry. I'm sorry. Me too. Min-jae stood abruptly. Thank you for dinner. He walked away, his limp pronounced, painful to watch. Nancy cleaned the dishes and whispered to the empty room. Progress. Nancy woke to find Min-jae sitting in the living room. He was staring out the window at the gray Seoul sky, his body rigid with tension. She didn't announce herself, just walked to the kitchen and started preparing breakfast. Do you actually believe you can fix me? His voice cut through the quiet. Nancy cracked eggs into a bowl. I don't want to fix you. Then what do you want? I want you to eat breakfast. Everything else can wait. He turned to look at her, and for the first time, she saw a flash of something other than anger. Curiosity, maybe. Or exhaustion so deep it looked like surrender. You're different from the others, he said. What others? The therapists. The doctors. They all came with their clipboards and their pity and their textbook solutions. You just cook. Nancy smiled. Food is honest. It doesn't ask questions you're not ready to answer. Min-jae stood, wobbling slightly. His legs were still weak from the accident and months of disuse. He made his way to the kitchen table and sat down heavily. Nancy placed a plate in front of him. Eggs. Toast. Sliced mango. Tea. Eat, she said simply. He removed his mask slowly. Nancy didn't gasp. Didn't stare. She'd seen the leaked photos, but seeing him in person was different. The scars were intricate, web-like surgical marks spreading across the left side of his face like cracked porcelain. Thin precise lines ran from his temple across his cheek down to his jaw, multiple intersecting scar lines creating a distinctive pattern. His face was asymmetrical from the reconstruction. He waited for her reaction. The horror. The pity. The awkward looking away. Nancy just poured herself tea and sat across from him. The eggs are better with pepper. Pass the shaker? Something in Min-jae's chest cracked. He passed her the pepper. They ate together. And for the first time in 8 months, Min-jae didn't feel like a monster. The days began to form a rhythm. Nancy woke at 6 and prepared breakfast. Min-jae appeared by 7, no longer hiding in his room. They ate together. Talked sometimes. Sat in comfortable silence other times. Tell me about your acting, Nancy said one morning. Min-jae's jaw tightened. That life is over. Is it? Or are you just afraid to find out if it could come back? Look at me, Nancy. Really look. Who's going to cast this face? She met his eyes directly. Someone who values talent over packaging. But that's not the real question, is it? What's the real question? Whether you still love it. The acting. Not the fame. Not the magazine covers. The actual work. Min-jae stared into his coffee. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I don't know who I am without it. Then maybe it's time to find out. Nancy introduced physical therapy slowly. Not the clinical, painful sessions the hospital had prescribed, but gentle movement. Stretching in the living room. Walking the length of the villa. Small victories measured in steps, not miles. My legs are useless, Min-jae said on the 3rd day, frustrated tears in his eyes as he stumbled. Nancy caught him, her small frame surprisingly strong. Your legs survived a crash that should have killed you. They're not useless. They're healing. It hurts. I know. But pain means you're still alive. Amara doesn't get to feel pain anymore. You do. That's a gift, even when it doesn't feel like one. He leaned on her, breathing hard. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what was the point of losing her? They stood there in the middle of the living room, two broken people holding each other up. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Nancy found Min Jae in his room, standing in front of the covered mirror. His hand was on the white sheet, trembling. I haven't looked at myself since the hospital, he said without turning around. Not really. Not directly. Nancy stood in the doorway. Do you want to? I'm terrified. That's normal. What if I can't handle it? What if I see myself and it breaks me completely? Nancy walked over and stood beside him. Then I'll be here when it does. And we'll put you back together. That's what we do now. We break and rebuild. Break and rebuild. Until one day, we realize we're stronger than we were before. Min Jae's hand tightened on the sheet. Will you stay? While I look? I'm not going anywhere. He pulled the sheet down. The mirror revealed everything. The scars. The asymmetry. The face that used to sell out movie theaters and now looked like a stranger's. Min Jae's breathing became shallow. His hands clenched into fists. I'm hideous, he whispered. Nancy stepped closer, her reflection appearing beside his. You're human. Scars and all. Korea's golden boy, he laughed bitterly. Look at me now. I am looking at you. I see someone who survived. Someone who gets up every morning even though it hurts. Someone who's trying. That's not hideous, Min Jae. That's brave. He turned to her, tears streaming down his scarred face. How do you do that? Do what? Make me believe I'm not completely broken. Because you're not. Damaged isn't the same as destroyed. Min Jae pulled her into a hug. She held him while he sobbed, his body shaking with months of suppressed grief. She didn't tell him to stop. Didn't tell him to be strong. She just held him and let him feel everything he'd been running from. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were red but clearer. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. Not the actor. Not the accident. Just me. Nancy smiled. That's the easiest part. That night, they sat on the terrace overlooking Seoul. The city lights sparkled like fallen stars. Nancy wrapped a blanket around her shoulders while Min Jae nursed a cup of tea. Tell me about Amara, he said. Not the sad parts. The good parts. Nancy's face softened. She had this laugh. This huge, ridiculous laugh that was way too loud for her tiny body. People would stare at us in libraries. She didn't care. She said joy should be loud. She sounds amazing. She was. She wanted to help people. Open a practice for young women dealing with depression and anxiety. She had all these plans. Notebooks full of ideas. And then one day, she just couldn't carry it anymore. Do you blame yourself? Every single day. I replay every conversation. Every moment I was too busy to call her back. Too tired to notice she was fading. Min Jae reached over and took her hand. It wasn't your fault. I know that here, Nancy touched her head. But not here, she touched her heart. Is that why you became a caregiver? Yes. I couldn't save Amara. But maybe I could save someone else. Maybe I could give someone the lifeline she never had. They sat in silence, their hands still connected. I'm glad you came, Min Jae said quietly. Me too. 3 weeks into Nancy's stay, something shifted. The walls Min Jae had built so carefully began to crumble. He started leaving his room without prompting. Started asking Nancy about her day. Started smiling, small and hesitant at first, then more genuine. One evening, Nancy was cooking dinner and singing along to Afrobeats playing from her phone. Min Jae appeared in the kitchen doorway, watching her dance unself-consciously as she stirred a pot. What is this music? He asked, amused. Burna Boy. African Giant album. You've never heard it? Living under a rock, remember? Nancy laughed and turned up the volume. Then it's time for your education. She grabbed his hand and pulled him into the kitchen. Come on, move with me. I don't dance. Everyone dances. You just forgot how. She moved his arms, showed him the rhythm. Min-jae was stiff at first, self-conscious. But Nancy's joy was infectious. Soon he was moving, awkward and unpracticed, but moving. They danced around the kitchen like children, laughing when he stepped on her feet, spinning when the chorus hit. When the song ended, they were both breathless. Min-jae realized he was smiling. Really smiling. And it didn't hurt. See? Nancy said, grinning. Not broken. Just rusty. Min-jae looked at her, really looked at her. The way her dimples deepened when she laughed. The way she moved through the world with purpose and light despite carrying her own grief. The way she saw him as a person, not a tragedy. Nancy, he said softly. Yes? I think I'm falling in love with you. The kitchen went quiet except for the bubbling pot on the stove. Nancy's smile faded, replaced by something more complex. Fear. Hope. Confusion. Min-jae, I'm your caregiver. This is my job. Is it? Is sitting with me at 3 in the morning when I have nightmares part of your job? Is teaching me to dance? Is making me believe I'm worth saving? You are worth saving. Then why can't I love the person who's saving me? Nancy stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. Because love is complicated. Because people will say terrible things. Because I don't know if what you're feeling is real or just gratitude or trauma bonding or... Min-jae moved closer, careful not to crowd her. Nancy, I've been surrounded by people my entire adult life. Agents. Managers. Co-stars. Fans. Thousands of people who claimed to care about me. But the moment I wasn't useful anymore, they vanished. You're the only person who showed up when I had nothing to offer. Not because you wanted something from me. Because you chose to. That's not trauma bonding. That's the first real thing I've felt in years. Tears welled in Nancy's eyes. I'm scared. Of what? Of hurting you. Of not being enough. Of failing again. You haven't failed. But what if I do? What if I can't help you the way you need? What if? Min-jae cupped her face gently. What if we stop asking what if and just try? Nancy closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. This is complicated. I know. People will judge us. Let them. I don't want to be another headline in your life. You're not a headline, Nancy. You're the story I want to tell for the rest of my life. She opened her eyes and looked at him. Really looked. Saw the vulnerability. The hope. The man behind the scars. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay. We try. Min-jae smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met softly, tentatively, like a question being asked and answered at the same time. When they broke apart, Nancy was crying. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. The weeks that followed were a mixture of healing and discovery. Min-jae and Nancy navigated their new relationship carefully, like people learning to walk on ice. They held hands during therapy sessions. Kissed in the kitchen when Mrs. Kim wasn't looking. Talked late into the night about dreams and fears and everything in between. But love, Nancy learned, didn't erase the past. It just made facing it feel less impossible. One night, Min-jae woke screaming. Nancy rushed to his room to find him tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, his eyes wild with terror. The truck, he gasped. I can't stop seeing the truck. She climbed into bed beside him, pulling him into her arms. You're safe. You're here. I've got you. His body shook against hers. What if I never get better? What if I'm always this broken person who can't even sleep without falling apart? Then you're a broken person who's loved. That doesn't make you less worthy. How can you love this? He gestured at himself, at his scars, at the mess he'd become. Nancy took his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Because this is you. The real you. Not the polished actor on magazine covers. Not the perfect smile that sold movie tickets. This version, the one who cries and struggles and fights to get out of bed every morning. This is the man I love. Min-jae kissed her desperately, like she was oxygen and he was drowning. They held each other until dawn, two wounded people finding shelter in each other's arms. But Nancy knew that holding each other in the dark wasn't enough. Min-jae needed more than her love. He needed hope for a future beyond these villa walls. She spent her evenings researching, scrolling through medical journals and clinical trials. At 2 a.m, she found it. The Genesis Protocol. An experimental reconstructive surgery being pioneered in Zurich by Dr. Helena Weber. The procedure combines stem cell therapy with advanced micrografting techniques. The success rate was 87%. The next morning, Nancy brought her laptop to breakfast. Look at this. Min-jae scrolled through the information, his expression unreadable. Another surgery. Not just any surgery. This could change everything. I've had 6 surgeries, Nancy. Each one promised miracles. Each one left me looking like this. This is different. Dr. Weber is doing things no one else has attempted. Real tissue regeneration. Look at the before and after photos. Min-jae pushed the laptop away. No. Min-jae. I said no. I'm done being cut open. Done hoping. Done being disappointed. Nancy closed the laptop and reached for his hand. I understand you're scared. You don't understand. You still have your face. Your life. Your dreams. Mine are gone. Are they? Or have you just decided they are because it's easier than fighting for them? Min-jae stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You think this is about giving up? I've been fighting for months. Fighting to walk. Fighting to look in the mirror. Fighting to believe I'm worth anything. I'm exhausted, Nancy. I don't have another fight in me. Yes, you do. Because you're still here. Because you got out of bed this morning. Because you let me love you even though you're terrified. That's fighting, Min-jae. He turned away, his shoulders tense. What if it doesn't work? Then you're exactly where you are now. Alive. Loved. Moving forward one day at a time. And what if it does work? What if I get my face back and I'm still empty inside? What if the problem was never the scars? Nancy stood and wrapped her arms around him from behind. Then we deal with that together. But you deserve the chance to find out. Not because the world needs your face. Because you need to stop seeing yourself as a monster when you look in the mirror. Min-jae turned in her arms, burying his face in her hair. I'm so tired of being afraid. I know, love. I know. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the morning light. 2 days later, Min-jae made the call. Dr. Weber's voice was warm but professional as she explained the procedure. The Genesis protocol uses your own tissue to rebuild the damaged areas. We're essentially teaching your body to heal itself at a cellular level. But I must be honest, Mr. Kong. This isn't a magic eraser. There will still be scarring. The goal is restoration, not perfection. I don't need perfection, Min-jae said, glancing at Nancy. I just need to see myself again. Then let's make that happen. The flight to Zurich was Min-jae's first time leaving the villa in 8 months. He wore a mask and sunglasses, a baseball cap pulled low. Nancy held his hand through security, through boarding, through the moment the plane lifted off and Seoul disappeared below them. What if someone recognizes me, he whispered. Then they see a man traveling with someone he loves. Nothing more. The clinic was sleek and modern, all white walls and soft lighting. Dr. Weber was in her 50s, with kind eyes and steady hands. She examined Min-jae's face carefully, taking measurements, asking questions about pain levels and mobility. The damage is extensive, she said finally. But not irreparable. I can work with this. How long will recovery take? 6 months minimum. The initial healing is 3 months, but the tissue needs time to fully integrate. You'll need to be patient. Min-jae looked at Nancy. Can she stay with me? Dr. Weber smiled. We encourage it. Recovery is as much emotional as physical. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. Nancy and Min-jae spent their days exploring Zurich, walking along the lake, eating chocolate in small cafes. They talked about everything and nothing. Made plans for after. Allowed themselves to hope. The night before surgery, Min-jae couldn't sleep. He stood by the hotel window, watching the city lights reflect off the water. Nancy joined him, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders. Talk to me. What if I'm different after? What if the surgery works and I go back to being that person I was before? The one who cared more about image than substance? That's not who you are anymore. Trauma changes people. You can't unknow what you've learned. What if I forget? What if I get my face back and forget what it felt like to be invisible? Nancy turned him to face her. Then I'll remind you. Every single day. I'll tell you about the man who danced with me in the kitchen even though he was terrified. The man who held me when I cried about Amara. The man who chose to fight even when he wanted to give up. That's who you are, Min-jae. Scars or no scars. He kissed her deeply. I love you. I love you too. Now come to bed. Tomorrow's a big day. The surgery took 11 hours. Nancy sat in the waiting room, praying in Yoruba, then English, then just wordless pleading to any god who would listen. She called her mother in Lagos, who prayed with her over the phone. She texted Min-jae's grandmother in Busan, who she'd been secretly corresponding with for weeks. When Dr. Weber finally emerged, Nancy jumped to her feet. How is he? The procedure was successful. Better than expected, actually. His body responded beautifully to the grafts. But it will be several days before we remove the bandages. He needs rest. Nancy was allowed into recovery. Min-jae was unconscious, his face wrapped in pristine white bandages. Tubes and monitors surrounded him like a technological cocoon. Nancy pulled a chair close and took his hand. You did it, love. Now comes the waiting. The days blurred together. Min-jae woke and slept in cycles. Nancy read to him. Played music. Told him stories about her childhood in London, about her Nigerian father and British mother, about growing up between two worlds. You're going to love Lagos, she said one afternoon. The chaos. The energy. The way people embrace life so fully it's almost violent. Will you take me there? His voice was muffled by bandages but hopeful. Everywhere. I'll take you everywhere. On the 7th day, Dr. Weber removed the bandages. Min-jae sat in the examination chair, eyes closed, barely breathing. Nancy stood behind him, her hands on his shoulders. Remember, Dr. Weber said gently. Swelling is normal. The final results take months to fully emerge. She began unwrapping the gauze, layer by layer. The room was silent except for the sound of fabric pulling away from skin. When the last bandage fell, Dr. Weber stepped back. Open your eyes, Mr. Kong. Min-jae opened them slowly. Looked at himself in the mirror. And gasped. The scars were still there, but transformed. The web-like pattern had been refined. The jagged edges had been smoothed. The raised tissue had been flattened. His cheekbones sat correctly now, symmetrical and natural. The overall effect was striking, not perfect, but undeniably him. He looked like someone who had survived something terrible and come out the other side stronger. I can see myself, he whispered. I can actually see myself. Nancy was crying. Min-jae reached up and touched his face, exploring the new landscape. His fingers traced the refined scars, the healed tissue, the face that was both familiar and foreign. What do you think? Dr. Weber asked. Min-jae turned to Nancy. What do you think? She cupped his face, her thumbs gently stroking his cheeks. I think you're beautiful. Just like I did before. Min-jae pulled her into his arms and wept. Dr. Weber quietly left the room, giving them privacy. Thank you, Min-jae said into Nancy's hair. For believing in me. For pushing me. For staying. Always, Nancy whispered back. Always. They stayed in Zurich for 3 more weeks, attending follow-up appointments, watching Min-jae heal. He grew stronger each day. Started smiling at his reflection. Started talking about the future with confidence instead of fear. I want to produce, he told Nancy over dinner one night. Not just act. I want to tell stories that matter. Stories about real people struggling with real things. That sounds perfect. And I want you with me. Not as my caregiver. As my partner. In everything. Nancy reached across the table and took his hand. I'm not going anywhere. But the real world was waiting. And it wouldn't be kind. They returned to Seoul in late spring. The city was blooming, cherry blossoms painting the streets in shades of pink and white. Min-jae had gained weight, his body strong again. His face had healed beautifully, the scars now part of his story rather than his entire identity. Mr. Park met them at the villa with news. The industry is buzzing. Word got out about your surgery. 3 studios want meetings. 2 directors have sent scripts. Your old agency wants you back. Min-jae looked at Nancy, then back at Mr. Park. Set up the meetings. But I have conditions. I want creative control. I want to produce my own projects. And my personal life stays private. Non-negotiable. Mr. Park grinned. Welcome back, Min-jae. The press conference was scheduled for the following week. Min-jae would officially announce his return to acting and reveal his new production company. Nancy helped him prepare, running through potential questions, calming his nerves. What if they ask about us? He worried. Then you tell them it's private. You don't owe anyone an explanation about who you love. The day of the conference arrived. Min-jae wore a simple black suit. His hair was styled but not overly so. His scars were visible, and he made no attempt to hide them. Nancy watched from backstage as he walked onto the platform. The room erupted with camera flashes. Reporters shouted. Min-jae stood at the podium, calm and centered. Thank you all for coming, he began. I know there's been speculation about my absence. About my recovery. About my future. So let me be clear. Yes, I had reconstructive surgery. Yes, I'm returning to acting. But more importantly, I'm returning as someone who understands that worth isn't measured in beauty or fame. It's measured in authenticity. The room fell silent. I'm launching a production company focused on stories about resilience, trauma, and healing. Stories that don't shy away from the messy, complicated reality of being human. And I'm doing it on my own terms. A reporter stood. Min-jae, can you tell us who helped you through your recovery? Min-jae's eyes found Nancy in the wings. Someone extraordinary. Someone who reminded me that being broken isn't the end. It's just the beginning of becoming whole in a different way. That's all I'll say about my personal life. Next question. Nancy smiled, pride swelling in her chest. The conference was a success. The media response was overwhelming. Headlines praised Min-jae's courage. Social media exploded with supportive messages. His story trended worldwide. 3 major studios confirmed meetings. Directors who'd written him off began calling. Korea's golden boy was rising from the ashes. But with visibility came scrutiny. 2 weeks after the press conference, Nancy was grocery shopping when she noticed people staring. Whispering. Taking photos with their phones angled in her direction. She quickened her pace, heart racing, and called Min-jae from the car. Something's wrong. People were watching me. Come home. Now. When she arrived at the villa, Mr. Park was already there, his face grim. He held up his tablet. The headline made Nancy's stomach drop. Mystery woman behind Min-jae's recovery? Foreign caregiver spotted at villa. The article was accompanied by grainy photos of Nancy entering and leaving the house. Speculation filled the comments sections. Some supportive. Many cruel. Questions about her background. Her intentions. Whether she was taking advantage of Min-jae's vulnerability. This is exactly what I was afraid of, Nancy said, sinking onto the couch. Min-jae knelt in front of her. I'll release a statement. Make it clear that you're off limits. That will only make it worse. They'll dig deeper. Find out about Amara. About why I became a caregiver. They'll twist everything into a story that fits their narrative. Then what do we do? Nancy looked at him, tears threatening. Maybe I should go back to London for a while. Let things cool down. No. Absolutely not. Min-jae, this is your career. Your comeback. I won't be the reason it gets derailed. He grabbed her hands. You're not derailing anything. You're the reason there is a comeback. I don't care what they say. But I care. I care that they're calling me a gold digger. I care that they're questioning whether you're being manipulated. I care that every time you're seen with me, it becomes a headline instead of just a man with the woman he loves. Mr. Park cleared his throat. There might be another issue. They both turned to him. Eugene has been calling. Your ex-girlfriend. She heard about your return and wants to meet. Min Jae's jaw tightened. Tell her I'm not interested. She's very persistent. She's also scheduled to attend the Seoul Film Festival next month. The same one where you're receiving a special recognition award. Then I won't go. Min Jae, you have to go. It's one of the biggest nights in Korean cinema. Your absence would raise more questions. Nancy stood, wiping her eyes. You should go. And you should see Eugene if she wants to talk. Get closure. Move forward properly. Nancy. I mean it. I'm not worried about her. I'm worried about you carrying unfinished business. Min Jae pulled her close. The only business I care about is building a life with you. Then prove it by handling your past so we can have a future. The Seoul Film Festival was a glittering affair. Min Jae wore a tailored suit that fit his rebuilt frame perfectly. His scars were visible under the lights, but he walked the red carpet with his head high. Nancy watched from the villa, her heart in her throat as cameras captured every angle. Inside the venue, Min Jae was surrounded by well-wishers. Directors he'd worked with. Actors who'd missed him. Industry executives eager to discuss projects. He smiled, shook hands, answered questions about his new production company. Then Eugene appeared. She was stunning as always. Designer gown. Perfect makeup. The actress who'd dated Min Jae for 2 years before the accident. She'd visited him once in the hospital, seen his injuries, and never returned. Her silence had been one more cut in an already devastating time. Min Jae, she said, touching his arm. You look incredible. Eugene. Can we talk? Privately? He wanted to say no. Wanted to walk away. But Nancy's words echoed in his mind. Get closure. He nodded and followed her to a quiet corridor. I owe you an apology, Eugene began. For disappearing. For not being strong enough to stay. It's in the past. Is it? Because I've regretted it every day. Seeing you now, seeing how you've recovered, I realize I made a terrible mistake. Min Jae studied her face. Once, those words would have meant everything. Now they felt hollow. What are you really saying, Eugene? I'm saying I want another chance. We were good together. We could be again. No. We couldn't. Why? Because of whoever you're hiding? The caregiver the tabloids are speculating about? Her name is Nancy. And she's not someone I'm hiding. She's someone I'm protecting from people who don't understand what we have. Eugene's expression hardened. You're choosing a nobody over someone who actually fits in your world? She's not a nobody. She's the person who saw value in me when I had nothing to offer. Who sat with me in the dark. Who believed I was worth saving. That's not someone who fits in my world, Eugene. That's someone who created a new world where I actually want to live. You'll regret this. She'll leave eventually. They always do when the novelty wears off. Min Jae stepped closer, his voice low but firm. Nancy lost her best friend to suicide. She became a caregiver to honor that loss. She came to Korea not knowing if she could help me, but determined to try. She makes jollof rice at 2 in the morning when I have nightmares. She teaches me Yoruba phrases. She dances in the kitchen and makes me remember what joy feels like. She's not going anywhere. And neither am I. He walked away, leaving Eugene standing alone in the corridor. But the damage was done. Photographers had captured them talking. Captured Eugene touching his arm. Captured what looked like an intimate conversation. By the time Min Jae left the festival, the photos were everywhere. Min Jae and Eugene reunite at film festival. Korea's power couple back together? Has Min Jae moved on from mystery caregiver? Nancy saw the headlines on her phone. Saw the photos. Saw the comments speculating that she'd been a rebound, a phase, something temporary while Min Jae healed. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through article after article. When Min Jae arrived home, he found Nancy packing. What are you doing? What I should have done weeks ago. Going back to London. Nancy, those photos mean nothing. I told Eugene. I know what you told her. Mr. Park already filled me in. But it doesn't matter what you said, Min Jae. It matters what the world sees. And the world sees you with a beautiful, famous actress who actually belongs in your life. You belong in my life. Do I? Because every day I stay, I'm another headline. Another distraction. Another reason for people to question your judgment. Min Jae grabbed her suitcase and threw it across the room. Stop deciding what's best for me. Nancy flinched. They'd never raised voices at each other before. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I'm sorry. But Nancy, you can't leave. Not like this. I have to. I'm opening Amara's place next month. The support center I've been planning. I've been putting it off, but it's time. That's my purpose, Min Jae. That's what I'm meant to do. Then I'll come with you. We'll open it together. No. You have your comeback. Your production company. Your life here. My life is with you. Nancy's eyes filled with tears. I'm pregnant. The room went completely silent. Min Jae stared at her, processing the words. What? I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. I found out 2 days ago. I was waiting for the right time to tell you, but there's never a right time anymore. Min Jae crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. A baby. We're having a baby. Yes. And that's why I need to go. Because I won't raise a child in the middle of a media circus. I won't let our daughter or son be photographed and speculated about before they're even born. Then we'll go together. We'll go to London. Open the center. Raise our baby away from all this. Min Jae, you can't just abandon everything you've built. I'm not abandoning anything. I'm choosing what matters. You think I care about red carpets and premieres more than I care about you? About our child? Your career. We'll survive. I can produce from anywhere. Visit Seoul when needed. But Nancy, I can't lose you. Not because of photographers. Not because of headlines. Not because you think you're protecting me by leaving. Nancy collapsed against him, sobbing. I'm so scared. I know. So am I. But we do this together. We figure it out together. You don't get to make this decision alone. What about Eugene? The speculation? The constant questions? Min Jae tilted her face up to meet his eyes. Tomorrow, I'm holding another press conference. I'm going public about us. About the baby. About everything. Let them speculate all they want. I'm done hiding the best thing that's ever happened to me. They'll crucify us. Let them try. I survived a car crash that should have killed me. I survived 8 months of hell. I can survive some harsh headlines. Can you? Nancy searched his face. Saw the determination. The love. The absolute certainty. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. She kissed him, pouring every ounce of fear and hope and love into it. When they pulled apart, she whispered, okay. We do this together. The press conference the next day was unlike anything Seoul's entertainment industry had seen. Min Jae stood at the podium with Nancy beside him, her hand in his. I called you all here because I'm tired of speculation. Tired of half-truths. So here's the full truth. This is Nancy Okafor. She was hired as my caregiver after my accident. She became my friend. Then she became the love of my life. And now, she's pregnant with our child. The room erupted. Cameras flashed frantically. Reporters shouted over each other. Min Jae raised his hand for silence. Nancy is British-Nigerian. She became a caregiver to honor her best friend who died by suicide. She came to Korea not knowing who I was as an actor, only as a person who needed help. She saved my life. And now we're building a life together. We'll be splitting our time between Seoul and London, where Nancy is opening a women's mental health support center. I'll continue producing and acting, but on my terms. My family comes first. Always. A reporter stood. What about Eugene? Eugene is part of my past. Nancy is my future. That's all I have to say about that. Aren't you concerned about the cultural differences? Nancy stepped forward, her voice steady. Love doesn't require the same passport. It requires the same values. Min-jae and I both understand loss. We both understand resilience. We both believe in using our experiences to help others. That's more than enough foundation for a life together. Another reporter, what will you do about the criticism? People are already saying terrible things online. Min-jae squeezed Nancy's hand. People will always have opinions. But the only opinions that matter are ours. We know our truth. We know our love. Everything else is noise. They walked off the stage together, ignoring the shouted questions, the flashing cameras, the chaos. Outside, Min-jae's car was waiting. They climbed in and drove away from the madness. That was terrifying, Nancy said, her hands still shaking. You were perfect. Do you really think people will accept us? Some will. Some won't. But Nancy, I stopped living for other people's acceptance. I'm living for us now. For our family. She placed his hand on her still flat stomach. Our family. 6 months later, Nancy stood in the entrance of Amara's place. The building in central London had been completely renovated. Bright, welcoming spaces. Therapy rooms. Group meeting areas. A small cafe where young women could gather and feel safe. Photos of Amara lined one wall, her smile watching over everything. Min-jae walked up behind her, their daughter Amara Min-jae sleeping in his arms. At 3 months old, she had Nancy's eyes and Min-jae's nose. A perfect blend of two worlds. You did it, Min-jae whispered. She would be so proud. Nancy touched Amara's photo. I hope so. The opening ceremony was small but meaningful. Local community leaders. Mental health advocates. Young women who would be the center's first clients. Nancy spoke about her friend, about loss, about the importance of showing up for each other. Amara believed that everyone deserves to be seen. Really seen. Not judged. Not fixed. Just witnessed in their pain and reminded they're not alone. That's what this place is. A reminder that you're not alone. The crowd applauded. Min-jae watched his wife with absolute pride. She'd taken her grief and transformed it into hope. Just like she'd done for him. After the ceremony, they walked through the center together. Baby Amara awake now, looking around with curious eyes. Do you miss Seoul? Nancy asked. I miss the food. But no, I don't miss the rest of it. My next film starts shooting here next month. I'm producing 2 more projects remotely. Life is good. Even without the fame. Min-jae stopped and turned to her. Nancy, I have a wife I adore. A daughter who's perfect. Work that matters. And I sleep through the night without nightmares. That's not giving up fame. That's gaining everything that actually matters. Nancy kissed him softly. I love you. I love you too. Both of you. They stood in the center Nancy had dreamed of for years, holding their daughter named after the friend who'd started it all. Outside, London rushed by. Inside, there was peace. Min-jae's phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Park, your film just got selected for Cannes. Congratulations. He smiled and put the phone away without responding. There would be time for that later. Right now, he was exactly where he needed to be. Nancy noticed. Good news? The best news. But it can wait. You sure? Min-jae looked at his wife, his daughter, the center that would help countless young women, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. I'm sure. This moment right here? This is everything. And it was. Not perfect. Not without scars. But real. Honest. Built on a foundation of pain that had been transformed into purpose. They'd both been broken. Both lost. Both convinced they had nothing left to offer the world. But they'd found each other in the darkness. And together, they'd built something beautiful. Nancy took Min-jae's hand. Baby Amara cooed between them. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, Nancy's best friend smiled. Because her death hadn't been in vain. It had planted seeds that grew into something bigger than grief. It had grown into hope. Into love. Into a second chance for two people who'd thought second chances were impossible. The world had tried to tell them their story didn't make sense. Wrong backgrounds. Wrong timing. Wrong circumstances. But they'd written their own ending anyway. And it was perfect precisely because it was theirs. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that healing is possible. That love can emerge from the deepest pain. That being broken isn't the end, it's just the beginning of becoming whole in a completely new way. Subscribe for more stories that remind us we're all fighting battles no one sees, and that showing up for each other might be the most revolutionary thing we can do. Like this video if you believe in second chances. Comment below about a time someone showed up for you when you needed it most. Because every one of us is either Nancy or Minjae. Either the person reaching out a hand, or the person learning to take it. Either way, we're all just trying to find our way through the dark. And maybe, if we're lucky, we find someone willing to walk beside us until we remember we're capable of walking on our own. That's not weakness. That's being human. Thank you for staying until the end. Your presence here matters more than you know.